And welcome to our Environmental Industry Summit preview session, broadcasting here today from San Diego. To turn it over now to Andy Patterson.
So what I've defined this so far is surviving a divided federation, which we discussed in Boston, but I've added in a time of Corona. For those of you Gabriel Garcia Marquez fans, the Nobel Prize winner who pioneered the book Love in the Time of Cholera. So we're on good literary stead here as we roll forward despite the turmoil. So James, I'm going to set up your discussion on Corona just with a couple of graphs here. Where are we today? As of yesterday, this is the curve of the countries that are afflicted between Europe and the US, not including China. And you can just see the difference here between Italy and South Korea in terms of the overall approach. Italy did not do what we did in terms of banning flights from China soon enough. And so they're discovering, and we all are learning vicariously, that there is a real difference when we're talking about an exponential phenomenon. So I think that's one of the takeaways of this whole episode that we're dealing with collectively now is, what is it like to experience exponential change? And that's really what we're being whipsawed by now. What I would watch for, if you go to the next slide, this is the chart that woke up Washington. I think this appeared in the Lancet. James might be able to clarify. But they started doing projections as more results and data came in. And if you do nothing, total deaths in the United States could amount to 10 million, skewed toward people over the age of 70. And so this supercharged all the agencies in the White House in DC to go out and do something. The Treasury Department is debating what we call helicopter money. But also we did get some good news 48 hours ago. In China and in France, they're testing chloroquine as a possible cheap malaria drug from the 40s that has started to show effectiveness against those that are afflicted. So watch for developments in the next week on that. That could affect the duration of the crisis. So that's really the battle that we're all facing now, is what is the affliction curve really going to look like in terms of caseload? And this is the curve we're all trying to flatten down, is how bad will it get at peak? So in the United States, what we would note is watch the case level by March 31st. If the USA has gone past 120,000 cases, then we're running closer to an Italy situation. But if we're still under 60,000, again, we're at 14,000 roughly today, then we may be closer to what South Korea is experiencing with a leveling off. So there's a benchmark for you in terms of the duration of this crisis, according to the latest forecasts. And at 14,000 as of today, we've seen 205 deaths, mostly people over the age of 75, and less than 2% mortality. So the scenarios we actually see unfolding could take place in a narrow range. So the way that we've set this up is, we think sitting here this week that it's still a 50-50 proposition, and that's actually what the betting salons, not the polls. If you go to the betting salons like predicted.org and some of the others, it's still 50-50 between a Biden and a Trump matchup. So that's what we have reflected in this matrix. But then we say, okay, it's 50-50 for the White House. What about the House and the Senate? And again, we see a fairly narrow range of possible outcomes. I could see the Democrats just losing 10 seats in the House. I could see them losing 30 seats in the House, which would mean Republican control once you get to 20 seats lost. The Senate is going to be in a very narrow trading range. It could end up 51-47. It could be 54-46. I don't see anything like Obama had when he came in 2009 with 60 seats in the Senate, because a lot of the seats, as it just comes up in the cycle, are pretty strong on both sides. So there are a few toss-ups. We'll get into that. But the thing I want you to take away from this is the scenarios for the election might actually be in a narrow range of possible outcomes. So we'll show that in the next slide. So if you just take the House vote from 2018, which was really good for the Democrats, they picked up a considerable number of seats, but this parallels a lot of the strength that they show in the presidential election map. It's very similar. So then if you go to the Senate, this is kind of the trading range of where we've been with the Senate. So there are a couple of trends here. Is the Senate is going to continue to be more evenly divided, but if you go from 2008, when the Democrats were at 60 Senate seats, this is a disturbing trend for the Democrats to basically have lost a dozen or 15 seats in that time period since Obama was first elected. So then what does it look like for 2020 on the next slide? This is Sabato's crystal ball as of last week. So what he sees, and he's one of the better prognosticators, is 51 for the Republicans, 47 for the Democrats, and two toss-ups, Tillis in North Carolina and McSally in Arizona. He's saying that there will be at least one change for each party. Cory Gardner losing in Colorado, probably. Doug Jones is certainly a lost cause in Alabama for the Democrats. He got in a bit of a fluke last time. So each side is down one to kind of start things off. And then it's going to come down to Collins in Maine. Some say Joni Ernst in Iowa is a little bit vulnerable. Georgia, I don't think you're going to see a change there, despite the fact you have two seats up. I think the Republicans will keep those. So again, the theme here is you've got a narrow set of possibilities for outcomes in the Senate. They'll be somewhat vitriolic, but I don't see a big sweeping change like we saw in 2008 or in 2014. Next. So then again, this is just a reminder of the 2016 results. The Democrats continue to pile up votes in major cities. Hillary did win the 2016 popular vote, but if you take California, New York, and Illinois, she won that popular vote by 7 million in just those 3 states. So Trump won 47 states by 4 million votes. So the Democrats have a problem in that their vote is piled up in New York, Chicago, LA, and San Francisco, which doesn't change the Electoral College at all. Next. Here then is some hope for the Democrats in the House. If you took the House vote that came out in 2018 and you applied it to the Electoral College, the Democrats would win. But the flaw in this analysis is that the Republicans are going to have much higher turnout in 2020 than they had in 2018. And where that turnout occurs is going to determine the election. So the next slide is kind of the starting point. So Grant, we can declare these states pretty much today. These are stone cold locks for each party going in way ahead of November. So the next slide is a reminder that the Democrats, that Pelosi has to defend 30 House seats currently held by a Democrat that Trump won in 2016. So these are House districts where Trump got more of the vote, but a Democrat is currently sitting in that seat. So these are the key swing seats for the 2020 election that will determine the balance in the House. And so you can see in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Arizona, New Mexico, Iowa, that these are important districts in terms of determining which way the House flows. So if you go to the next slide, and you start to say, okay, well, who could win which states, Biden or Trump? This is kind of where you get, except for Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona, which we think will determine the election. Just those three states. We're going to give Michigan and Virginia to the Democrats. We're going to give Florida and North Carolina to the Republicans. Trump, I think, keeps Iowa, but I think the election is going to come down to those three states, plus those strange one-seat votes, one delegate votes in Nebraska and Maine. Upper Maine went for Trump, and he got one delegate up there in Maine. Obama won the what's called the Warren Buffett seat in Omaha, Nebraska back in 2008. So the whole state's red except for Omaha, and Obama picked up that one delegate. So then here's our outcome from our EBJ Brain Trust. But imagine this as your outcome, 269 to 269 in the House, and the Senate actually ends up at 50-50. And then you've got the House at 220 to 215. So then that new House would choose the president, but it would be the new House, and each state only has one vote. So if you did that today, Republicans would have 26 states that would vote Republican in the Electoral College as one state, one vote per one state, and then Democrats have 19. So there are a few states like Arizona that are on the cusp of flipping. We have to keep track of those. But if you got 269 to 269, this is a very plausible map. We would face that kind of acrimonious debate, somewhat like the election year 2000, to decide the fate of who will be our president. It's like 00 on the roulette wheel, but I put forward to anybody watching that this is a plausible electoral result. You can't say, oh, this is outlandish. No, this is feasible. Okay, so for grins, I'll end there.